That's great. Thank you, Jake. If everyone can please put questions into the Q&A box, and can our panel please introduce themselves? That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm happy to go. I'm Rory Robinson. I'm the International Student Recruitment Manager for the Americas at King's College London.
Hi everybody, I'm Kim, Head of Student Recruitment at SOAS. You'll probably see me in a few of the other sessions.
Hello everybody, my name's Alex Ingold. I'm the Undergraduate Admissions Manager at LSE, and you will definitely see me later in the day on the admissions panel.
Hi, I'm Mark Woolley. I'm the Faculty Admissions Manager for Medicine at Imperial College.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm just having a quick look through some of our questions, and the first one that I want to propose is, if a student has been rejected for an interview for medicine, is there any point for reapplying in future cycles, and would their application be considered as a fresh application? Can I please direct this one initially to Sarah and then to, I think, is it Alexandra?
Hello everyone, sorry I didn't get the chance to introduce myself. My name's Sarah Bennett. I am the Deputy Programme Lead for the Medical School at UCL. I'm also the admissions tutor. Yes, so if you are rejected at interview, then the majority of medical schools will allow you to reapply the following year. I mean, medicine is a very competitive programme. We had at UCL over 4,000 applications for 334 places. And so unfortunately, there will be a lot of students who aren't eligible or aren't accepted for interview or are successful at interview. And that's okay. You will be with a lot of other students in the same situation. And so my advice to you is to rethink, to reapply. If this is genuinely what you want to do, try again, because you will be with a lot of other students doing exactly the same thing. But there are also lots of other routes into medicine. You can also think about graduate entry programs by doing a degree in another degree first and then applying at the end of your degree. And there are so many other allied healthcare professions that all provide you that ability to be able to look after people, to care for others, and show that compassion and empathy that you might have as those skills. So yeah, absolutely. If you aren't successful at interview or aren't successful getting to interview, please do try again.
For LSE, this is very straightforward. We don't have a medical school and we don't interview, so there isn't much I can contribute, unfortunately.
Okay, sorry. I think, is it Mark then for Imperial?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Sarah said. We would always encourage applicants who are unsuccessful after interview to reapply, obviously provided they achieve the grades. I mean, it's really not uncommon for people that reapply to be successful on the second attempt, because they've got that bit more experience, partly of the application process, but also a bit more life experience that they can then draw on during the interview. So yeah, we would definitely encourage it.
Thank you. One of the questions that has come through is, how have the interviews for international students changed due to COVID? I can pose that to Rory at King's.
Yeah, sure. At King's, I'm sure, like most institutions, we went online, and the interviews took place virtually. Again, a similar point in the cycle as we go into the new year. That's when our interviews usually take place, and so the timeline didn't necessarily change, just the platform that was used. Usually we do a multiple mini interview format, but because of the platform used, it went to a more traditional panel interview. But we are of course looking to bring back the MMIs as soon as possible once the situation allows us to. But yeah, that's it from King's point of view.
Okay, and for Imperial, either Jack or Mark.
Yeah, sure. We have definitely been using a lot of online tools to interview, and also this is likely to continue. So the pandemic actually has opened a lot of more opportunities for us to interview more candidates, towards students who are from outside the UK. So we're definitely doing this a little bit more compared to pre-pandemic situation. And also for our medicine, for example, usually in traditional approach, we tend to ask candidates to arrive on campus to have in-person face-to-face interview. And this year we're doing this kind of blended approach at both, is using both virtual and also it's kind of asynchronous kind of interview. So this is actually something we're doing now. It's more like a hybrid mode. Again, whether that's going to continue or not, we are all kind of have to look at what government guidance we're going to have in the future. But yeah.
Does anyone else have any anything they can feedback that may vary slightly for our audience?
I can come in from a UCL perspective. So I think for all students, the interviews changed over the last 2 years, and not just international applicants. So at UCL, and like a lot of medical schools in the UK, we ran online interviews for all applicants. As Jake said, we will have to review what the government guidance is and how the pandemic pans out over the next few months. And so I don't think anyone will be committing to their actual format at this point of the year. And so I would always advise any applicant that they keep up to date with the website of their chosen universities, just to make sure of any potential updates and changes. I mean, things are getting a little bit better here in the UK, but who knows what might happen in the winter months, which is the time at which we normally interview. So we normally interview between December and March. And so that can be a time when sometimes infection rates increase. So we will wait and see what happens a bit later in the year.
Okay, thank you. Because the other part of the question was, when can they expect the arrangements for applicants in the next cycle to be finalised, and when would they receive that information? Can you feedback on that, Sarah, and then Imperial and King's?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to give a precise date. Certainly, we would expect to contact all of our applicants after the 15th of October. We will contact them all directly in that last week of October normally, to outline what our interview format will be, to give applicants some guidance on preparation for interviews at that point, and how the process will proceed over the next few months. And I think that's very similar for most universities, that they will contact applicants directly at that point. We will try and put information and update our websites in as real time as we can, but I can't give you an exact timeline for that.
And does anyone else have anything that's slightly different for their institution? No? Okay, just moving on to another question. This one is directed for Imperial. So it says, for pre-interview assessments at Imperial, is there an indication of presumed prior knowledge? This person's a careers advisor in Scotland, and our mathematics courses in Scotland do not cover the same areas as A-levels.
That's absolutely fine. I mean, as long as the qualification is considered sort of comparable to A-levels, it doesn't necessarily need to be A-level mathematics, as long as it's sort of equivalent to that kind of A-level standards. The school curriculum should be sufficient enough to prepare students to understand what the questions are. So again, in some scenarios, yes, the qualifications are not sufficient to prepare for the student with direct entry. Again, in these cases, it's also easier for us to identify that kind of problems, because we wouldn't want to admit the students to the program. Otherwise, we're setting them for failing. Whether that's from Scotland or outside the UK, we do compare the equivalences between qualifications, understand that kind of, how these are translated to A-level standards, and then design questions in that particular way. So I don't think they should worry too much about that.
Another one for you, Sarah, is, or for medical anyway, someone's asking, are there any thoughts about expanding the medical quota now that EU students are deemed international? But I think lots of people want to find this out.
Oh,
So present
that's
that to
it.
both institutions.
Absolutely. It's a great question. And I think certainly in the UK and across the world, we need more doctors. We know that. But it is also very expensive to train doctors. And so in the UK, the numbers are strictly capped by the UK government. And so that is because of the amount of money that it costs the government and the taxpayer to train medical students. It's a lot more than the fees that are actually paid by each individual student. And so at the moment, the cap remains at 7.5% of our total cohort, and that's the same for every public medical school across the UK. There are some private medical schools that don't have that cap and don't have that quota, and therefore they have larger numbers of international applicants. I can't see that it will change soon. However, we will wait to find out what the UK government might suggest in relation to that in the future. But at the moment at UCL, we have 24 places for international applicants, and that does include EU applicants as well.
Okay. And so another question that's came through, which is quite general, is that were applicants this year accepted from outside the UK for medical, for the institutions that deliver?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, as I say, we have 24 places for international students and we filled all of them. We tend to get a lot of international applicants, and so unfortunately it is actually more competitive as an international applicant than it is as a home applicant. So we had nearly 1,000 applications for those 24 places, and so unfortunately there will be a lot of people that we are unable to interview or to offer places to. So just be aware of those competition ratios. They're very similar across every single medical school in the UK.
And does anyone else have anything to add regarding that for medical? No? Okay. Sorry.
I was just going to say Sarah covered that brilliantly. So yeah, nothing.
Okay. Well, I have a question here for King's. And when do interviews for midwifery typically run until someone has an applicant for 2022 who's still not heard back about their interview? And when is the latest you could expect to hear? So this is from a school in Glasgow.
Okay, right, yeah. I'm more than happy to contact them directly, or if they'd like to drop into one of our Connect sessions, I can follow up with them directly, and we can look into that student's case specifically. So yeah, if they'd like to join us on a Connect session, we can look into that. But they're usually ongoing until the course is filled. But yeah, we can look into that specific case if you'd like to connect with us, for sure.
Okay. So one of our audience has come in with, yes, quite a, yeah, I can imagine they would ask this, is that given such a high increase in applications and competitiveness, do any of your institution anticipate introducing interviews and assessment for some of the more competitive courses? So I can see some nodding of heads. If anyone would like to, Imperial come in, I mean, you do for most.
Just say for
Anyway.
LSE, we have no plans for introducing interviews. We do obviously keep everything under review, and some of our programs are extremely competitive, you know, where we receive many more applications from excellent, fantastic students than we have offers to make and places to study. But at the moment, there are no plans to introduce any additional interviews or indeed admissions tests.
What I'd probably add to that is, though there are no plans to introduce specific interviews or admissions tests, one thing I would say to students is it is becoming a more competitive landscape out there, and we've seen that more this year than ever before. I think, you know, if any of you are on the UCAS counsellors Facebook page, you'll see on a daily basis there's UCAS counsellors saying, my students got 4 grade A predictions but still hasn't been made an offer. So one thing I would say to students is engage with all of the online events that different universities are running, the in-person events once they come back, because if you engage with all of them, that will allow you to build the best application you can for universities, which even for those universities that don't need assessments or interviews, that will mean that you've put in the very best application you can do. So try and do it on the planning side of really engaging with as many open days as possible and taster days and all those kind of things.
Brilliant, thank you.
So from a King's perspective, yeah, there are no plans that I'm aware of for any new courses, but as Jake pointed out in the presentation, pharmacy is probably our most recent course that introduced an interview as part of the selection process. So just wanted to highlight that again, as that would be another step for those pharmacy applicants.
One of the questions that we had sent in advance about medicine is, what are the minimum scores for students getting into medicine last year? So if the institutions that deal with medicine can advise our audience.
I suppose the writer of the question is asking about the admissions test scores. So every medical school uses the admissions tests in slightly different ways in terms of their selection procedure. Quite a lot of medical schools do use a cutoff. So they will have a look at all of the applicants and the scores that they have got for either UCAT, if they're a UCAT school, or BMAT, if they're a BMAT school, and will potentially interview the top scoring applicants. So that cutoff score varies every year, particularly for BMAT, as that is the test that we have at UCL. Because the scores are normalized as a scale of 1 to 9, it does vary quite a lot every year what the average score for our applicants can be. So sometimes it's between 4 and 5.5, can be somewhere of the average in section 1 and section 2, and the average for section 3, the written test, is usually around 3. We publish on our website the average scores for the applicants to UCL, because that's the data that we receive. Likewise, on other medical schools' websites, they do publish data about the applicant cohorts over recent years. So have a look at that, but try not to be worried about that as an indication for when applicants apply. Obviously, higher scores do strengthen somebody's application and will give you perhaps a higher chance at interview, but it's not completely absolute. So giving exact cutoff scores is often not very helpful, but I would have a look at what each medical school says on their website about how they use the scores within their selection procedure.
Is there anything further from Imperial?
No, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, we also publish the BMAT cutoff, and also BMAT. The only difference between Imperial Medicine and UCL probably because BMAT is more like the first hurdle students have to overcome before anything else. It's more significant than any other elements of the application. Compared to UCL, may be different, but yeah, we do publish that kind of the BMAT minimum threshold scores in section 1, section 2, section 3. You know, we use that as indicators to shortlist candidates.
Okay, all right. So,
sorry, Patricia, just from King's perspective, we're a UCAT school, so that would be the only test that would be required for medicine. Again, it's vitally important, but we wouldn't look at the score of the UCAT test without ensuring that your student has met or exceeded the general entry requirements, whether it be A-levels or international equivalent. And then that would move on to the second stage and taking a look at whoever scored highest from the UCAT. And yeah, again, we don't really publish the required score. As Sarah mentioned, these tests can vary each year, but generally we take the global average for the year and ask for a score that's slightly above that. And I guess with the way that the test is designed, we generally look for an average score around 650 to 700 across the 4 sections. So again, if your students is achieving around that, then that certainly will put them in a competitive position. But of course, the higher the score they can get, the stronger they'll be. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. One of the questions that was sent in advance has asked how the counsellors can help prepare students for the admissions test for the faculty of economics and mathematics and for chemistry. So yeah, if I can pose that to the panel.
Is that one for you, Jake? Sorry.
Yeah, for economics.
We don't have currently. We haven't actually sort of. I mean, the program economics is a brand new program. It's just been newly approved. So the program is actually called Economics, Finance, and Data Science, which is incredibly heavy on mathematics, as all economics degrees will be. But again, yeah, in terms of the actual preparation, I'll probably say focus on the mathematical biased sort of elements, because it's all about testing the numerical analytical skills and how to apply that knowledge into the sort of economic financial markets. Because people, you know, who have applies for this kind of program, they're looking to sort of, you know, sort of thrive in that kind of job market. So we are looking for, you know, current knowledge and economics, but also, you know, whether they're able to use data and mathematics to tackle some of the problem related to economics. So that's probably what the admissions tests will be. There will also be, I mean, these are the possible questions, of course. So because it's a brand new program, we actually haven't sort of come up with like a more comprehensive set of interview questions or style or what type of exam they have to take, but it's likely to be internally assessed by the department.
Okay, so another one for medicine, these become very popular. So it says, for medicine applications, are you only considering competitiveness of each student rather than subjecting them to other categories for selection, for example, quota systems that are in place in some other countries? So I think I think what they're asking is, you know, are we only consider them on their competitiveness? I'm not sure I quite understand that question.
Yes, that's how we select our students. I mean, the quotas for international students are fixed, and so we do assess international applicants separately to home applicants, because that is the quota that we have. And so it will be based upon how competitive the application is in comparison to the rest of the applicants. So it's always based upon the cohort that applies for that particular year. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Someone's also asked, is for medicine, are students required to have done 60 hours of shadowing or work experience for their application?
No, absolutely not. It's work experience is very much quality versus quantity, quality over quantity. I advise advisors and students and applicants that work experience is there not just to tick a box, but to actually help students find out more about themselves, about whether they wish to care for other people. Can they help demonstrate the attributes that are needed for a successful applicant to medicine? Do they know what it is like in the healthcare setting? But work experience is a huge variety. It is work experience in hospitals, it can be in caring situations, it can be voluntary work, it can be paid activity. Certainly at UCL, we don't have a requirement of a certain number of hours, and we don't have a requirement that it is clinical. I would strongly recommend that all applicants and advisors look at Medical Schools Council website. It has fantastic resources on there for applicants and for teachers and advisors, and does give lots of information about what work experience to do. but use the work experience then as part of your personal statement and use it as interview information. When you're giving examples at interview, relate it back to what you learned during your work experience and what skills, attributes and behaviours that you have developed as a result.
Okay, thank you. One for Imperial is how can we best prepare our students for the Imperial Computing pre-interview assessment?
Sure. For our computing program, again, this is one of the most competitive courses, which also requires both admission exams, 2 admission exams, which is normally including the computing department exam, step paper, as well as interview. So there is a series of hurdles students have to overcome before the final offer can be made. In terms of actual test itself, it's all about mathematics and also computing knowledge. So they may need to have some existing knowledge in terms of the programming or computing languages, things like this. So something could also be self-taught, but it will be very kind of basic level. Again, in terms of actual mathematical content, it will be mostly derived from the school content curriculum from whether that's IB, A levels, whatever they study. So yeah, multiple choices again, and also we use that as indicator to shortlist candidates for interviews.
For the medical, possibly for Imperial, someone's asked, is there a breakdown of quota or King's? Say for instance, like 10 for EU, 5 for Middle East. How I think they're trying to establish, is there a quota for different regions? Is it just based on the interview performance and the application and test scores?
Yeah, we don't discriminate against any particular nationality. That's not how we assess. This quota is, impose the policy from the government. It's only a separation between the UK and outside the UK. But yeah, again, there is no sort of a preferential treatment towards a particular nationality. So.
And for another one for Imperial, obviously, because you do quite a lot of interviewing, for engineering students, in particular, is there preparation for the interviews? Are students required to reference lectures or professors or their course just to acquire in-depth knowledge about the course they're applying for?
Yeah, absolutely. So, which is actually a great question. And I think this is also one of the reasons why we are launching this taster lecture series for students to really understand the in-depth degrees at Imperial and also to relate to that kind of academic background. And so yes, it's always helpful to do that and to mention what they have explored and discovered about the subject. But again, as I said in the presentation, the actual interview is actually more about finding out the motivation and the suitability for the program rather than the actual knowledge level they have towards that particular subject. Of course, it's going to be very useful and they can be very sort of articulate and also able to expand on the subject when they get asked the question. But again, the main purpose is about finding out the motivation and whether this is truly the person we really want to admit to the program and whether they can contribute to the community as well.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. If there's any more questions, someone's asked a question about the UCL architecture, sort of the portfolio and interview, the last stage of the evaluation process. We don't have anyone from the architecture online at the moment. So what I would suggest is to go on to the Connect sessions, and we have our student recruitment team available to answer a bit more specific questions that will be online. So if you connect, if you've not had your questions answered, our admissions panel will be on a bit later and our Connect sessions are happening. So please do access those and use them because we have a range of staff in them for the specific institutions. And I think the link was shared again in the chat box, so you can access that directly from there.